Hi everyone, I'm Shelley and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I want to thank you for your patience and me finally getting this video out. It has been a whirlwind here. For those of you who don't know, my elderly mother fell and broke her hip and her wrist. And my brother, who was the only other person who can really help out with her, she is at a rehab center now, for doing therapy for her hip and everything. He just had surgery on his foot and is not able to get around. So I've had the brunt of this just kind of put on me, and it's been tough. But I'm here and I'm finally getting this video done, and I hope you enjoy it because I wanted to explore 10 topics for the beginning truther. Now, I want to first start out by saying that the 10 topics that I'm going to talk about today, I am not going to delve deeply into them. I am just going to give you a basic synopsis of what they are because I want you to decide to get out there and start researching these things on your own. And that is the whole point of questioning the narrative, is getting in there and doing your own research and not just believing what everyone else has to tell you. Now, I am certainly no expert on any of these topics. I've looked into some of them a little bit more deeply than others, but they're all interesting enough. And I think you'll find that when you are looking down these rabbit holes, you will see that so many of them are connected. And so I just wanted to give you some ideas. This is also not an exhaustive list. There are so many rabbit holes that you could go on. And these are just the 10 that came to the top of my head. So the first one is mud flood and reset. So if you don't know what a mud flood is, it's basically the idea that there was some worldwide catastrophe. It's thought to be worldwide that wiped out an entire civilization. Now, one example of a reset could have been Noah's flood, but we wouldn't think of that as a mud flood. A mud flood, I think, is kind of a catch-all term. I think that the mud flood was more likely to be the result of maybe a worldwide earthquake, because if you look at pictures of soil liquefaction, you will see that they look very similar to some of the buildings that we see here. Let me just find the picture that I wanted to show you. Before I actually get to that, though, I just wanted to point out that this photo here is supposedly of an excavation site, and you will see a lot of similarities between excavation sites and what we now see as mud flood buildings. Now, a lot of civilizations built on top of each other, and we see that in Egypt, we see that in Greece, and so it's very commonplace in those areas. But what we are finding is that it also happens in North America. You will see examples of this in England. You will see examples of this all over the world. And that's something that they don't really talk about too much. So this is an example of that. So as you can see here, the bottom of these buildings were at one point buried. I believe that here they had removed a sidewalk. And when they removed the sidewalk, you can see that there used to be a lower layer of these buildings. And this is something that people try to kind of explain away, but in some cases their explanations might be feasible, but in other cases you have to wonder, all right, why are they building doors underground if these basement windows here were just to let in light? And that's one of the explanations you'll hear a lot. If you see mud flood windows, which are windows that are ground level and will extend underground, a lot of people will tell you they're just coal chutes, or that's just to let in light. Okay, that's fine, but what are these doors for? So mud flood and reset is something that you might find very interesting. And leading into that, I'm going to talk next about what some people call Tartaria, and what is basically an advanced worldwide civilization. It is very common for us to be given the impression nowadays that our ancestors and the people who lived here before us were primitive and weren't very smart. But then we find evidence of buildings like this all over the world. And the interesting thing about this is that this style of building with the arched windows, with just the grandeur, the intricate design, the very type of architecture that you would not expect to be being built by people who rode horse and carts, which is what we are supposed to believe, if you believe the official narrative. We will see this all over the world, buildings like this. And I actually did another video about this not too long ago. I'll leave my Question the Narrative playlist in the description box in case you haven't seen all of them. But yeah, I did talk about worldwide civilizations in that one, and you will see this beautiful architecture that never looks like it could have been done by people who didn't even at that point in time have electricity. And yeah, you will find architecture like this in North America, of course, Europe, of course, because that's where we're used to seeing it. But you will see architecture like this in Japan, Africa, South America, Cuba, just anywhere, Australia, anywhere that you can think of, you will actually find architecture like this. And so it only makes sense to wonder, could there have been one worldwide civilization at one point? Because yes, a lot of people write it off as saying British colonization. But if you actually look at the list of all of these places where these buildings are, not all of them were, well, a lot of them were never colonized by the British. And again, it doesn't explain the fact that these people do not seem to have had the technology unless people were much smarter than what we are being led to believe. Or you can only believe that possibly this architecture was here before, and tying into the reset, if people repopulated and kind of claimed these buildings for their own that an earlier population had once built. Again, it's something really interesting to look into. The next topic that I'm going to encourage you to look into, and you might not actually find any information specifically titled this, but that's the only thing that I can think of to call it, is cyclical history. What you will find if you are reading a lot of the historical narratives, especially like on Wikipedia or in textbooks, it seems like the same thing happens over and over and over again, but to different people. Like there's always a fire that destroys the records of something, and those records were supposedly in a fireproof safe, but they still burned. And it's something that you'll hear of happening in several different locations, or you'll hear of entire cities that burned to the ground, with really some cockamamie stories of how it happened. And I even have to say that in the Bible, there are a lot of stories that seem cyclical. Now, I am not saying that that does not mean that they didn't happen that way, because what we hear from Ecclesiastes is what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Now, if you look into this explanation of that verse, it says that it's a modern idiom. There's nothing new under the sun. It's often used as a world-weary complaint against life's monotony. When Solomon wrote the statement, he was emphasizing the cyclic nature of human life on earth and the emptiness of living only for the rat race. Now, that could indeed be what he meant when he was saying it, but I often wonder, could he have meant something deeper? Could there have been a much more literal meaning to this, that life really is cyclical? The same things really do keep happening over and over and over again, and we could be stuck in some sort of wheel that is happening. And it's, again, something very interesting to think about. The next thing that I encourage you to look into is CERN, the home of the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland, and it is supposedly state-of-the-art science. I have read that they were trying to find the God particle, that they work with anti-gravity, and if you look just at the scientific aspect of it, that alone in itself is scary, because they are basically trying to rip a hole in our dimension. But then you look at the outside of CERN, where you will find this. This is Shiva, and this is a Hindu god, and I believe that this is the god of destruction. On top of that, we had this extremely creepy opening to the Goddard Tunnel, which has ties to CERN. It's very close to CERN. And there are videos of this that I encourage you to just go look up right here on YouTube. And it will show this extremely strange performance that was put on for the opening of a tunnel. And as you can see, very satanic stuff going on here, very troubling. And you have to wonder to yourself, what exactly does this have to do with a scientific site? But then when you think about, this is a scientific site that's trying to rip a hole in the dimension, yeah, that makes it a little bit more scary, doesn't it? So definitely, I encourage you to look into this too. And what would a list of rabbit holes be if you did not mention flat Earth? And I first of all want to tell you that if this is something that you have been scoffing at and have thought was absolutely absurd, I'm going to tell you that back in 2017, this was before things were being censored left and right. I was bored, and these flat Earth videos, before they started putting up debunking videos all the time, and there were actual flat Earth videos on there, I was like, okay, let me see what these people are talking about, because I don't know how anybody could ever think that the Earth was flat. And once I actually watched a video, and then I went to another and another, and I really delved into the topic for about 10 months. And after 10 months, I came back thinking, all right, I'm pretty sure that the Earth is not a globe. And so that is something that you might think that it's insane, because we have been bombarded so much with globe propaganda and with NASA. And that's another thing completely for you to look into, is NASA. But anyway, I won't even mention that in this list because it really ties in a lot with this one. Look into it. You will be surprised at the evidence that, yeah, this definitely seems to be the case. And Genesis 1:6 says, and God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And now it's said, I have not verified this, so you have to take this with a grain of salt, but it has to say that Brett Salisbury, ex-US intelligence, is said to have said the Van Allen belts are nothing more than the dome built by God, sorry. And then Psalm 148 says, praise him, ye heaven of heavens, and ye waters that be above the heavens. So there are waters above the heavens, and the firmament divides the waters from the waters. And that is what the Bible tells us. And could the firmament be a solid fixture, or at least maybe a plasma fixture, something more concrete than what we even in church have been taught, where a lot of times I was taught it was just, like the sky is the firmament. But if you actually look at the Hebrew word for firmament, I believe it was rakia, and it means emblazoned. It means something solid. Now, here we also have, this is from Logos Bible Software, and this is what the Hebrew model of the earth looked like. And as you can see, yes, it was flat, nothing about a sphere. And here again, it shows the waters above the firmament. Look into it. I really recommend watching the channel Celebrate Truth. That was one of them that really convinced me, and he looks at things from a biblical perspective. Um, so I also really enjoyed Eric Dubé's. Now he comes from a more of a new age standpoint, so I don't agree with everything that he has to say. But when it comes to the flat Earth topic and the proofs of it, his videos are really solid on that. If you can find them, I have a feeling they're probably hard to find right now. But anyway, look into flat Earth. It'll be fun if nothing else. Next is hollow earth. Now, this is something that I will admit to you, I have never really gotten too much into this topic, not because I have no interest. I'm very interested in this. It is very, very hard to find good information on the hollow earth. A lot of times you'll be pointed towards Vernian books, Journey to the Center of the Earth, things like that. But, nowadays, especially on YouTube, it's very hard to find kind of fringe topics like this, good videos on it that aren't just debunking it, but actually explain what it is. But I think that it's something that is definitely worth looking into. And it's something that a lot of people kind of look at flat earth and hollow earth as being an either or type of thing. Like if you believe the earth is flat, then you can't believe it's hollow. Or if you believe the earth is hollow, then you can't believe it's flat. And I don't really believe that to be the case. If you actually look at this biblical model of what the earth looks like, you will see that there is Sheol. And we know just from living here on this earth that there is an underground. And so could there be much more of an underground than what we believe there could be. And I think that, yeah, and this is actually going to tie in with one of the other topics I'm going to encourage you to look into, but the earth could definitely be a plane while also being hollow and having something underground. And this model shows you just how that could be. Now, am I saying that this is exactly what it is? No, I'm not saying that, but I'm giving you an example of how this could be possible. So don't just write it off if you believe one or the other. The next topic is giants and the Nephilim. And in our culture, we are taught to scoff at things like giants, and they're just fairy tales, like Jack and the Beanstalk or Paul Bunyan. But they people believed in giants. There have been giants, and even people like Abraham Lincoln have made remarks about the giant civilization. It's spoken of in the Bible. There are newspaper accounts of the bones of giants being found everywhere. And the Smithsonian has kind of taken it and just swept it under the rug, probably because it doesn't fit the evolutionary model. And so they don't like that. Look into it though. Actually dig in. It's something else that will be a lot of fun. And you will actually find that as you are looking into it, that there seems to be a tie-in between giants and what we call Nephilim. This is the skull of, it looks like a child. I'm thinking that it could possibly be from Peru. There are a lot of skulls like this found in Peru. And it is believed that a lot of these skulls may have come from the Nephilim, who were the children of the sons of God spoken of in Genesis 6 and human women. And if you will even look, on Egyptian artwork, on South American artwork, even Native American, a lot of them used to bind their heads because they wanted to look like the gods, or the royalty would bind their heads. And so what they found though, especially in South America, is that a lot of the skulls do not have evidence of binding. They were actually born that way, and they actually have I believe it's 2 parietal plates instead of 3. And you can find a lot of information from L.A. Marzulli. If you look into his books or his channel, he speaks about this all the time. But yes, it seems that because the Genesis 6 tells us that the children of the sons of God and women, they were giants and they were Nephilim. So yes, there's a tie-in between the two. Look into this, and I hope that you find good information on them. So the next one is Project Bluebeam. And so what you see right now is that we are being bombarded. And this isn't even something new. This is something that has been going on for decades. We're constantly being bombarded with movies and shows and books and even newspaper articles about alien life and UFOs and how we are not alone in the universe. And it seems to be getting ramped up nowadays. And so Project Bluebeam is actually a project in which I believe it's HAARP, HAARP, if you have never heard of it, is working on some sort of project in which they will be able to beam images up into the sky. And it is thought that these images in the sky are going to be used to deceive the people. Some people believe that they're going to actually fool us into believing that there is an alien invasion going on. Some people believe that Project Bluebeam is going to be used to fool people into thinking that Jesus has returned when he had not yet. It's very sinister, and it's something that more people need to know about. Next is chemtrails. Now, this is something that I have seen, I'm sure you have too, you have seen in your own life. And I remember several years ago looking up at the sky, and I thought to myself, I don't remember these planes leaving these huge lines across the sky when I was a kid. I remembered that when I was a kid, it was only jets that would leave a contrail line in the sky, and it would be very skinny and not very long, and then it would disappear after just a couple minutes. And what we're seeing nowadays, though, is these huge lines just crisscrossing throughout the sky. The other day I saw one in the sky near my town, well, actually in my town, that looked like a tic-tac-toe. And this isn't normal. I actually recorded in my old house. I was in the pool and I looked up and I saw a plane, and it was actually spraying out whatever they spray out. They say they're not spraying anything, but they will admit now that geoengineering is a real thing, but they don't want to link it to chemtrails, but that's really what it is. And I recorded it, just spraying this out. And then over time, I would just go back and record the sky because the sky was a bright blue. They sprayed this, whatever it was, and the line that was left over, not a contrail, it was left over. It did not disappear. It was not skinny. It actually started spreading out. And before you know it, I'd say about an hour later, the sky was white because this chemtrail that it had left behind had just kept spreading and spreading and spreading and spreading. And by that point, the blue sky was gone and we had a white silvery sky. And it's something that I see happening all the time. And look up in your sky and take notice to these things. And the last topic that I'm going to suggest to you is underground tunnels in cities, because I don't think we realize just how many of them there are. If you look underneath almost every major city, at least in the United States, there are underground tunnels, or in some cases, underground cities. And this is another situation that is worldwide. I know that I live in a very small town. I think it's like 1.4 square miles. And even in my own town, there is a tunnel system. Now, they say it was from mines, and it very well could have been, but it runs the length of my entire town. And look into your own city, see what's underneath you. And I don't know. I think that a lot of times we see the Seattle underground, we see, I was going to say Eureka Springs, but that actually isn't underground. That's just kind of like a lower level. I don't think that was underground. But again, this kind of actually goes into the hollow earth theory that I was talking about. An entire civilization of people moving out and about underground. There are sites underground that were very old that you could tell that people were actually living in them. And it brings to mind the Hopi legend about ant people who lived underground. Look into that as well. And you can never be bored living in this world because there are so many things that we can explore, so many things that we can look into. And I'm not telling you that you have to absolutely believe in every single thing that you look at or every single thing that I suggest. I'm just telling you, hey, this is pretty cool. Look into this, see what you think, and you know what? Have fun while you're doing it. That's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one either here or over on Instagram. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.